Yesterday my father said to me, I noticed you're doing a lot more with social media with this book than you have with the others. And I explained to him that when his last resort came out in 2017, I don't think we had the capacity to do Facebook Lives. And I really am liking lives because I am something of a perfectionist. And what that means, I'm going to speak a little louder to make sure everybody can hear me. What that means for me in terms of doing videos is that if I record the videos beforehand, I spend so much time editing them that sometimes the relevance of the video is missed because I have spent so many days editing the videos. So I like going live. It's very out of character for me because if anybody knows me well, they know that I don't like being the center of attention. I don't necessarily like to be seen. I describe myself as somebody who likes to be in the background on the stage, not under the spotlight, but I want the person in the spotlight to mention me there. I'm working on that, right? So I have this affinity for lives, and I just learned something sad, and I wanted to share it with you. I haven't even properly processed it yet, and so this live is gonna be long if the internet will allow, and if my phone battery will allow. It might be a bit long, but I'm going somewhere. And B, I'll be all over the place with it. I haven't quite planned it because I literally just learned something disturbing. Sad, not disturbing, but sad. All right, so I'm going to start with an excerpt, and I promise this is not a marketing excerpt. This is just an excerpt that kind of sets up what I want to describe to you and why what has happened is sad and how we can use this as a life lesson. So I'm reading from the very beginning of chapter 7, and because I didn't plan this excerpt, I don't even really know what happened at the end of chapter 6. So I can't set up the excerpt, but I'm going to read the excerpt to you. It's longer than the excerpts that I usually read, but like I said, I promise I'm going somewhere with it. I might even just skip a few sections. All right, so I'm going to skip over the first few paragraphs. So what is happening here is that Zoe Grace has, and just to set up, I'm reading an excerpt from his Last Chance. My latest release, it was released a week ago. It's available as a paperback, hardcover, and ebook. It's on Amazon, and it's also on other reputable sites where ebooks are available. My favorite book site nowadays is Scribd. I'll probably share a link for you to get a free membership for 1 month at Scribd in the comments. If you get a free month, I get a free month, and that's always good because Scribd allows me to read a lot and listen to a lot of audiobooks. So the 3 books are now available on Scribd. They're on Nook, they're on Apple, they're on Tolino, they're on several ebook selling sites. Paperbacks and hardcovers are on Amazon. Paperbacks may be elsewhere, but I'm not sure. I have not been following up. I'm kind of trying to take a kind of hands-off approach with this book as it relates to what has happened to it since I've released it, right? And I'll probably tell you why in another live. But yes, so in this scene, chapter 7, Zoe Grace has a morning off. This is way early in the book. She has already met the captain, Captain Isaiah Hendricks, and she's still working at the college, and she has a morning off. So she decided that even though she doesn't have a lot of money, she can probably afford to get a seafood breakfast at one of the little cook shops that you'll find as you go along the northwest coast of Jamaica. So think when you're driving from Montego Bay to Negril, there are so many cook shops there. So be warned that you should not listen to this scene while you're hungry, because there's food mentioned here and it's good food, and I'm hungry, so I don't know why I'm reading it, but I'll get to it. Like I said, it's a rambling post, so I'm trying to look at where I should start reading, because as I said, I did not set this up. All right, so Zoe Grace's stomach growled in a vocal request for a nutritional meal. She thought about the contents of her wallet and decided that she could afford to stop for breakfast at one of the seaside shacks. Seeing one, she pulled into the small asphalt parking area just off the road. She walked between low wooden poles designed to prevent the cars from going too far and past a narrow grassy area with 3 almond trees shading wooden picnic-style tables. To her left, she noticed that the beach was about 6 or 7 feet below a sharp drop-off secured by a wooden fence high enough to prevent someone from falling off, but low enough to afford an unimpeded 180-degree view of the ocean. She made her way to the bamboo cook shop with its galvanized zinc roof. The bamboo walls were painted in the typical Ethiopian-inspired so-called Rastafarian colors of red, gold, and green, and had a wide window at the front where orders could be made. She felt somewhat overdressed, standing so close to the ocean, wearing perfectly pressed khakis and a pink and white striped sweater top, but at least she had donned a pair of comfortable flip-flops she usually kept in the car. "Good morning," the woman behind the counter greeted Zoe Grace before she could open her mouth. Her smile was wide, and Zoe Grace sensed that this stranger was genuinely happy to see her. "Hello," Zoe Grace responded with a smile. "Do you have breakfast?" "We have whatever you want, since everything is done to order. If you want breakfast, we have breakfast. If you want an early lunch or dinner, we have that too. Have something special in mind?" The woman wore glasses and bright red lipstick, and Zoe Grace had difficulty determining her likely age. She looked for a menu of some kind, and the woman indicated the whiteboard mounted on the wall behind her. Zoe Grace scanned the offerings. Fresh fish in any style, steamed veg, bami, festival, yam, green banana, dumpling. So many choices, and at a lower price than she had anticipated. Her stomach rumbled in anticipation. "Any lionfish?" The woman grinned. "Yes, ma'am, fresh as can be. Came in this morning. Haven't even scaled them yet, though, so you'd have to wait a bit. Want something to drink while you wait? We have home-style lemonade, bush tea, light beer, soda, anything you want." Zoe Grace ordered peppermint tea and a steamed lionfish. The woman turned on the flame under a small pot that was sitting on the stove. "I can do that for you, but have you tried the lionfish curried in coconut milk?" Zoe Grace shook her head. "That's how I like to eat it, ma'am, although it's good no matter how you prepare it. Steamed, curried, brown stewed. The lionfish stands up very well to the curry and the coconut milk. You should try it. If you don't like it, you pay half price." I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. So this lady gives Zoe Grace a stool, and she starts preparing the food for Zoe Grace. In the book, it's very descriptive in terms of how she prepares the lionfish, which is interesting because I've never cooked lionfish in my life. But I think the process of currying anything in coconut milk is fairly the same. So she's described, well, the narrator is describing how the lionfish is prepared with the thyme and the onion and the this and the that and the pimento and the that and the that. So the process is there, but for my benefit, because I'm hungry, I'll skip it over. So this is where the lady introduces herself. She says, "My name is Nadia with a Y," the cook offered. "I'm here Sundays through Friday afternoons. I go to church on Saturdays." Zoe Grace smiled and introduced herself before adding, "I thought more or less the place was run by Rastas." She tipped her chin in the direction of the turban-style red cloth wrapped around Nadia's hair. "Why, because of the red, gold, and green?" Nadia's smile never seemed to disappear. At Zoe Grace's nod, she offered, "The colors attract the tourists. We usually get 1 or 2 buses every day." She leaned in and whispered conspiratorially, "I've got box braids under the wrap. Not the dreadlocks you might expect, but that can be our little secret." Her grin almost split her face in two. "In any event, some Rastas do worship on Saturdays, but I'm not one of them. I'm a Christian, not a Rastafarian." So then it goes on again to talk more about the food and the drink and all of that. So when Nadia with a Y serves Zoe Grace the food, she sits down to join Zoe Grace. So she says, "You don't mind if I sit? I want to see for myself how you like that fish." And then Zoe Grace considered the guarantee Nadia had made earlier. It couldn't be good business practice to offer discounted meal prices if customers didn't like the food. But one taste of the fish was all it took to convince her that no one could ever take advantage of the offer. She was sure the ecstasy was written all over her face as she savored the combination. She had to stop herself from moaning with pleasure. She took another bite to see if it was as good as the first. It was, she had expected the coconut milk to render the fish cloyingly sweet, but she was wrong. She had always loved a good curry, but the creamy coconut milk added another dimension to the party taking place on her palate. There was just the right amount of pepper, too. Not too much, not too little. This woman should be cooking in a five-star restaurant. When she told Nadia as much, Nadia laughed with glee and clapped her hands together like a delighted child. You're too funny. I couldn't work in a place like that. First of all, I don't think I could ever work inside again. I've been right here in this location for the past few years, and if I had to work inside a big restaurant kitchen, I might go crazy. Just give me my little bamboo cook shop and I'll be fine. I don't want anybody standing over me telling me what to do and how to do it. I'm in control of things here. I come to work every day and I do what I like to do, which is to cook and talk to people. Then, before I get too tired, I go home to my family. We don't have much, but we don't owe anybody anything except love, and we're content. Zoe Grace wanted to know more about Nadia, who happily supplied the information. The mother of three had a 21-year-old daughter, a son who had just turned 19, and a baby boy who was 9. I'm happily divorced, you know, she offered. I don't have a man trying to run my life. My ex-husband tried for years, but he gave up and moved out. I think he expected me to beg him to come back, but he got divorce papers instead. Of course, nowadays he's trying to weasel his way back into my life, but he's wasting his time. I'm moving onward and upward and not putting my life in reverse at all at all. It seemed that Nadia was repeating a speech she'd made several times, and Zoe Grace was fascinated. She liked Nadia. At first, the other woman's life had seemed so simple, as if there was something missing. But listening to her, Zoe Grace could tell that she was well and truly content, just as she had said. Based on what she was saying, Zoe Grace could see that any lack of material things didn't bother Nadia. In fact, when Zoe Grace thought about the amount of debt she was in these days, she wished she had taken the same approach to life. I'm going to stop there with this excerpt. Like I mentioned, this excerpt is from the very beginning of chapter 7. I also mentioned I would be rambling, and I am, because I'm going somewhere. I just don't have a roadmap to how to get there. I want to skip ahead to the front of the book. The dedication. Did I show the right thing on the screen? I can't tell. I want to read the dedication. For Soraya, Cecile, and Esther. Thank you for pouring your gifts into me while I was working on this project. Your confidence in my ability to see it through helped sustain me and get me to the end. And for Nordia, who may not see this. You are such a blessing to the world. I may only have met you a couple of times, but your inspiring story, warm ways, and wise words have stayed with me these past 5 years. May God bless you and your family. All right, I promise I'm going somewhere with this. Last year, it could be the year before, I'm not absolutely sure. I got a phone call from a young lady who is on Jamaican radio. Her name is Nadine A. Blair. She's on Love 101. I had been interviewed on the radio by her some years before when I just put out His Last Resort. And I don't remember where she got my phone number from. It was last year or the year before. And she told me that she was in the process of completing a book that she was writing, and she wanted a little bit of advice on how to get it formatted, get it prepared for publication. She has that book out now. It's on Amazon. I believe the name of it is Sing Your Song. And it's a very good book. So Nadine and I were talking on the phone, and we've developed a fairly good relationship in the months. And we talk on the phone like once every few months. But one day we were talking on the phone, and I do not remember the context of the conversation. But what I do remember is that one of us, we were talking about the fact that we had these books that we were supposed to publish that we had been delaying publishing for whatever reason. For me, I'm very good at procrastinating, and I just was not getting the work of finishing His Last Chance done. So we were having this conversation, and I don't remember which one of us said, if it is that we believe that God has given us these messages to share with the readers, and we continue to delay putting these books out, it is as if we have a prescription and somebody who is sick out there needs the prescription, they need the medication. We have the medication, and because of our own insecurities, we are withholding the medication from the people who need the medication. And it was really impactful for me, because it was that conversation that I had with Nadine that caused me to decide that I was going to finish His Last Chance. Because remember, the first version of His Last Chance was saved in my computer in 2016, and it did not get released until almost 2023. So it's 6 years, right? So when she said, we have the prescription, we have the medication, and our unwillingness or our insecurities are preventing people from getting the prescription that they need. Very impactful conversation. It was just a conversation on the phone, and when I came off the call, I was like, no, Marsha, you really need to get this book out there. So that was the impetus for me finally, putting my shoulder to the wheel and deciding to finish this book. She also put out Sing Your Song. I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, but it's available on Amazon, and it's a very good song, very good book, right? So thank you to Nadine for that conversation that really impacted me, that I didn't even remember about the conversation until maybe about last week. I was talking to somebody who similarly has a book that God has instructed her to publish, and because of her insecurities, she's holding on to this book. And she got my phone number from somebody who knows my brother, and she called me, and when I told her that, she went very silent on the phone, and I thought the call got cut off. And then she said, I'm sorry, I'm not saying anything. It's because I'm sobbing, because that thing about the prescription and the medication impacted her so much, the way it had impacted me. Fast forward to now. I just read a dedication to you, and I mentioned in the dedication Nordia, who may never see this. So I met a young lady named Nordia 5 years ago, just when I had put out His Last Resort a few months earlier, and I was doing some market research for a company that I do some work for sometimes. It's an international company, and every now and then they'll call me and say, or they'll email me and say, we need some market research done in this area, that area, the other area. Can you go into stores? Can you talk to market vendors? Can you go to events? Can you go on the ground and do some research? And I've done research into things like beauty supply products, makeup, hair products, skin products. Grabba, if you don't know what grabba is, I didn't either. It's a tobacco product that they mix with marijuana. I've even done research into the cannabis industry in Jamaica, and that research had me in Kingston and Ocho Rios and Negril and all over the place. So every now and then this company calls me to do market research for them. So about 5 years ago, I was doing market research for this company, and the market research required me to go and speak to some street vendors. Now, anybody who knows me well knows that Marsha does not like to speak to people she does not know. Even people when me know, me no want to talk to you. I mean, no offense, but I am really introverted, so it's very hard for me to go and speak to strangers, even as an adult. But the pay is good. So I have to weigh which is more important, my fear of speaking to strangers or the fact that the pay is very good. So in my research 5 years ago, I was on a road in Montego Bay talking to market vendors, talking to street vendors, and I met this lady named Nordia. And Nordia is actually the muse. She's the inspiration for the character Nadia in this book. And I didn't want to use the name Nordia, that's why I used the name Nadia. And it just became a thing, Nadia with a Y, because I didn't want people pronouncing it Nadia. So that's how the Nadia came about. But it's based on a lady named Nordia. And Nordia she has space between her teeth. She wrapped her hair Um, she was very much as I have described Nadia, with the distinction being that she didn't have a cook shop. She was running a stall on the side of the road in Montego Bay. And meeting her, she was just so interesting to speak to that every other time I went to Montego Bay for that research, I would go and find her like at lunchtime and I would sit at her stall and just talk to her for hours. She was just, when I met her, I just found her to be such an interesting person. And she told me I'm happily divorced. That's what she said. She told me she had three children. One was a 21-year-old girl, a 19-year-old boy, and a 9-year-old boy. She told me that her ex-husband wanted her back, but she wasn't interested because she's moving forward with her life. She's not going in reverse. If you have read His Last Chance, you'll also know that later Nadia tells two of the other characters that she stopped going to school when she was 11. Nordia, the lady I met, stopped going to school when she was 11. She said she completed grade 6 in primary school and she had to stop working because she needed to help her father and her mother to do whatever work they were doing. And she said she only had a grade 6 education. And I said to her, but you're so articulate. And she said to me, because education does not only come in books. Or she said, education does not only come in school. She said, you should know by now that you don't have to be in school to be educated. But talking to her, she was just so interesting and so educated, although she stopped going to school when she was 11. She said she had her first child when she was 16. She had two children by the time she was 18. And she was just talking about her life. And I would just sit just fascinated by this woman because she's just running a little stall, right? So she has, for those who are not in Jamaica, she has a very small wooden structure that's on the side of the road. She would take her things to the structure. She would sell food items and what Jamaican people call haberdashery items. So she might sell plastic cups or plastic forks or spoons. She might sell hats and t-shirts. She would sell whatever people wanted to buy in that area. She would sell guineps, that Jamaican fruit or that tropical fruit. And I just would spend hours with her. I was having a tooth issue at the time, a wisdom tooth problem. And she told me which mouthwash to buy. She told me which dentist to go to. And it was the same dentist that my friend, who is a dental nurse, had recommended that I go to that dentist in Montego Bay to get because I have a condition with my jaw that makes it difficult for a regular dentist to extract a wisdom tooth. So my friend, a dental nurse, recommended me to a dentist in Montego Bay. I just had not yet gone because it was going to cost a lot of money to extract this wisdom tooth. So when I spoke to Nordia, she said, oh, that's my dentist. And I was thinking, oh, you have a stall and your dentist is out in Fairview where the rent is so expensive and the cost of everything is so high. But what Nordia said was, I don't owe anybody anything. I'm building a house. I have a car. I mean, not because I'm working at this stall, it does not mean anything because this is comfortable. This is a comfortable living for me and my children. And I kept in touch with her over the years, but around last year, I lost contact with her. So when I was putting out this book, in fact, the early versions of this book do not have the dedication to Nordia in it, but I decided in the last version that I was putting out that I was going to add her to the dedication because while she may never see it, I wanted to be able to give her a copy of this book, have her read the book and see herself in it and know that she was the inspiration for this phenomenal character in the book. So today I decided to give her a call to let her know, hey, I have something for you. I'd like to give it to my brother who works in Montego Bay where I had met her. I'd like to give it to my brother so that you can collect it. And I wasn't even going to tell her what it was. So I called her number. I noticed she's not in WhatsApp anymore. I called her number, no answer. While I was sitting at her stall one day, she had introduced me to a friend of hers and she insisted that I should take the man's number. So I had the man's number. So I called him to say, I'm trying to get in touch with Nordia and I can't get in touch with her. Friends, it turns out that Nordia died of COVID last year. She had told me that she was asthmatic and she was quite overweight. And, when I described her, he said the only Nardia he knew that had a stall in the area where I was describing died of COVID last year. He said she had asthma, she caught COVID, and it was very, very quick. And I cannot tell you how sad I am, because it was almost prophetic, because the dedication to her in my book says, "And for Nardia, who may never see this, you are such a blessing to the world. I may only have met you a couple of times, but your inspiring story, warm ways, and wise words have stayed with me these past 5 years. May God bless you and your family." And when I was writing for Nardia, who may never see this, I really did not. To me, I was thinking she may never get a copy of the book, and therefore she may never see it, and she may never know how those conversations with her inspired me, because Nadia, the ideas that Nadia came up with in this book are ideas that I imagine Nardia coming up with if I presented her with that scenario, only to find out that she died before the book was published. And today, when I came off the phone with her friend Brian from Montego Bay, I said to myself, "Marsha, do you know if this book was what Nardia needed and never got because you put off writing it? Do you know if this was a prescription for her, medication for her, that she never got because you put off writing it?" And I have to console myself that the book that I wrote, that I finished writing this year, is not the same book that I would have finished writing last year if I had finished writing the book last year. So I have to console myself that God does not make mistakes, and that all things will work together for my good, because I love him, and writing is the purpose that he has called me to for this season. But it's just so sad to know that I dedicated a book to this woman and she will never know that I dedicated a book to her. She wasn't the only person I dedicated it to. I dedicated it to 3 people who I have known for years. One of them, Soraya, I have known since I was 6 years old. Cecile, I have known since I was 10. And Esther, I have known for the last maybe 10 years that we become close. Right? I knew her in high school, but we didn't have conversations then. But Nardia was someone who impacted my life, who was just operating a stall on the side of the road in Montego Bay. And I dedicated a book to her, and she will never know. So I didn't come on here to be morbid or sad or anything like that. I came on here to ask you, for those of you who are Christians, is there something that God has asked you to do that you're putting off doing because of your own insecurities? Is there something he has asked you to say? Is there something he has called you to write or to sing or to preach or to share? Is there something that God has called you to do that you don't think that you can do because of your, I come back to the same word again, insecurities, because of the fear of how it will be received, because of imposter syndrome? Who am I to tell this story? Who am I to share my story? Who am I to sing a song? Who am I to write a book? If years ago I read, if there is a book that you need to write, there is someone who needs to read it. And I apply that across the board. If there is a message that you need to share, there is someone who needs to share it. Do I know if Nardia had somebody that she needed to forgive, that this book would have inspired her to forgive? I will never know, because as we Jamaicans would say, she dead and gone. And I did not know that she was dead and gone. So apparently from last year when she came off WhatsApp, it was because she was gone. It was because she was gone. I just figured She might have changed her number or something. I didn't expect to call her friend Brian today and hear that Nardia died last year. I didn't. So, um, if there's something God is calling you to do, don't put it off. You might be withholding medication from somebody who needs the medication, right? So, I'm going to stop there. I don't have any idea how long this live has been, but it's been long. And I'm going to stop there and just spend some time just reflecting on the person I met and praying for her family, because her youngest child would be about 14 now. Yeah, her youngest child would be about 14 now. And maybe she would have had, I think she had a grandchild based on her WhatsApp profile pictures. Yeah. And just know that not because you're not a PhD or you don't have some huge qualification or a lot of education, it doesn't mean that you aren't capable of impacting somebody. I am the one with the master's degree. I was the one who was sitting at Nardia's feet. Not literally, but I felt like it in my mind. Listening to her talk about life and just seeing the joy that she exuded. Right? I am the one with the master's degree. She was the one with a grade 6 education. She was pouring into me. She was teaching me about life. So don't count yourself out because you don't have what other people have. Don't count yourself out because you haven't been where other people have been. Don't count yourself out because you're a teen mother or you dropped out of school early, you didn't finish high school, you didn't finish primary school because you run a market stall or you're employed to somebody in a little, what you might consider a little job, or somebody else might consider a little job. If God has called you to do something, do not let your insecurities prevent you from doing it sooner rather than later. And I will leave you with that. Love you, love you, love you. May God continue to bless you, keep you, cover you, and protect you, and send his angels to encamp around you and keep you safe and virus free. I don't even know Nardia's last name, but it is my prayer that she's resting in peace and that her family is comforted by knowing who she was as a person, and that them not ever seeing this dedication in this book will not mean that they do not know that she was an inspiration to other people. Take care.